Thank you, Peter. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fadwa. I'm a Saudi entrepreneur. I have my own consulting office in digital transformation and strategic planning. I'm very happy to be with you today. I'm very glad to be invited. For my experience, I have more than 22 years in working experience in different Saudi entities. And my master's degree is in computer science from Boston University in 2010.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to request you to keep silent, please, because we're struggling to hear our speakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mohammed Shah. I'm Smart City Director. I've been in technology for around 25 years. A lot of that time is here in the region with various entities and doing pioneering work in digital evolution. So I'm looking forward to the session today.
Thank you. So basically, the focus of this panel is more about data centers, but we're going to take a little skew towards data, AI, and policy development, especially considering the current approach and the industry, where the industry is moving in terms of best practices, what are the priorities for different businesses. So we are going to begin with Mr. Shah. I think I will point out the first issue to you, and comparing reaching against the hyperscale vendors, what are some of the considerations of the industry? When you are the senior expert in that space, consider that.
Well, I think there's two elements. One is scale, and cost. So I think organizations are looking at different types of scales of usage, and whether edge computing or hyperscale works for them. There's a transition away from on-premise data centers, and hyperscalers are becoming super hyperscalers. They're getting bigger and bigger and bigger around the world. So a lot of the organizations are switching to that, the Amazons of the world and the AlBawardi. And then you've got edge computing there. So I think those are the key considerations. Are you able to really scale without a provider? Are you really able to have a cost-effective contract? The better you negotiate the contract, the more stability you have in your cost. And that's how the ROI works in terms of moving from the traditional on-premise situation.
Given that was a home, how does the situation in terms of decision-making vary from the global space compared to the kingdom?
Yeah, I think one of the first things to consider in an organization when making that decision is that your data residency. If you are in an organization that stipulates data residency to be in a kingdom, then you need to work according to the providers that have actually data storage and processing in the kingdom. So I think that's one of the first things to concern, whether it's a regulatory requirement, whether it's an organizational decision. Sometimes it can just be an organizational decision that you don't want beyond borders data storage and processing. So that's the first thing to consider as an executive looking at the situation. Then you look at the providers. The good thing is that there are more and more providers here in the region as time goes on, and generally it's under the cloud umbrella. So more and more providers are coming in locally. There are more and more data centers coming on stream, and they're having different models for the hyperscalers, whether it's co-location or independent data centers. So more choices available, and that's the way we're looking at it.
Amazing. I think you've created a very interesting concept around the digitalisation, moving whether it's for HPP or hyperscale computing, and along with the further in terms of data residency. I understand that you're more expertise around developing data strategy and all that. So from a data residency perspective, how does the discussion look here in the kingdom?
Okay, so when we look at the ecosystem for the digital economy, we will find that AI IoT, cloud computing. These are all emerging technologies that Saudi Arabia is heavily investing in. So when we look at the progress and how data centers are now being implemented in Saudi Arabia, we will notice that there is heavy adoption of these technologies. So if we talk in specific about, for example, IoT sensors, they track equipment performance. This enables the preventive and as well as predictive maintenance, and it allows to reduce the downtime. This is a very important element with IoT. Also, if we look about it from a logistics point of view, IoT, it optimizes routes, it helps to monitor shipments, and therefore it will enhance very much inventory management. When we look at AI, on the other hand, it gets all the data from the IoT, from the IoT sensors, and analyzes this huge amount of data. This allows to optimize processes, it allows to have more quality control, it allows also to have better forecasting, demand forecasting. In the energy sector, AI and IoT as emerging technologies, they are being used heavily for smart grid management, also for the renewable integrations and for the asset predictive maintenance for assets. All these technologies, they work together, and I believe it's very important to have some lessons during the successful implementation for these technologies. One is to have a clear roadmap for how technologies are to be implemented. Like, for example, the cloud platforms in Saudi Arabia, they are mainly targeting scalable data storage, and they will allow for analytics, real-time analytics through AI as a service, security as a service, software as a service, and so on. So we are looking at how we can scale data centers in today's world. It's important always to think about cloud and how we can reduce costs at the same time to be scalable and flexible enough. Data centers are usually having modular design. This modular design, it allows for scalability, and this is a very important feature. Another lesson, I would say, the involvement of stakeholders. Working with the vast technologies in data centers, it needs collaboration from the different stakeholders. Also, we need to allow for innovation. Data centers are evolving every day. We need technologies for cooling, for energy efficiency. So innovation is very important in order for us to maximize value. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you seem like you are opening that.
No, I think those are very valid and important points, and it's really two things. It's like, one is the demand is just exponential. And I was just remembering an old theory of technology, every 2 years you get twice the amount of data. And I'm thinking now every 2 years you're going to get 10 times the amount of data. IoT and other devices and sensors, things that drive AI. It's just a huge demand that's going to come in front of us.
And I can't especially considering initially we had humans and the only humans and IoT producing data. But in this case, we're seeing AI is generating data.
Yeah, and imagine agile data transfer. It won't be devices, it won't be IoT. Each of our agents in AI, which is the next evolution in AI, which has already started, is the third level of AI maturity, is when agents are acting on your behalf. An agent can act on your behalf every second. So you imagine the amount of data that's going to be produced. And there's a corresponding agent that's going to respond to it. And then there's a transaction. So the amounts of data is going to be astronomical.
Amazing. And do you think as a kingdom we are ready to consume that? Not only consume, but also process that amount of data?
Absolutely. The way the kingdom's, mashallah, infrastructure has been structured, the way the telcos have been deregulated. I remember speaking about this 10 years ago. We had the most deregulated telecoms environment in the region. Everybody tells us, oh, look at Dubai, look at Dubai, look at Dubai. We were way ahead of Saudi. And we deregulated telcos, 3, 4, 5, 6 players a long time ago. They really put the infrastructure to the kingdom that we're benefiting from today. They put the connectivity layer in, they put the reach in, they put the tier 3, tier 4 data centers in, which now the hyperscalers are actually starting to co-locate in until they can get their data centers up and running. And if you look at the digital evolution of the consumer, you know, Saudi consumers are some of the most active per capita users in social media, in real-time data consumption. So you've got the maturity on the demand side, and then you've got all of the infrastructure. So I think it's an ideal area where the kingdom will shine.
And this becomes the enablers now of executing. Amazing. So I think it's quite further in terms of like the readiness of the kingdom, and especially we can focus on the logistics industry specifically, logistics and manufacturing. How do you feel like you can react to taking advantage of AI and even like proceed and also look at things like from a strategic perspective?
Thank you for the question. Of course, the heavy investment in AI in Saudi Arabia, it's in many different sectors. We have more than 24 sectors that now are adopting AI, including logistics and manufacturing. AI in general, why we use it? Because it has the capability to analyze huge amount of data in a very quick time. Also through the sensors, we can detect the default during manufacturing. If you are, for example, manufacturing a car, the sensors will be able to detect if there is a default where human eye will not be able to detect it that efficiently. So there is a lot of potential for AI in manufacturing as well as logistics. It helps to optimize routes and to have a predictive maintenance before issues actually occur. It can let us know how we can have better decision making towards managing shipments, towards inventory management. It's very important for us to use AI in areas that are related to the quality of the products and the services. The analytics, the real-time analytics, that helps very much in the decision-making in these sectors. Also, one very important point I would like to mention is the quality control. When you have AI embedded in your processes, you will be able to optimize the processes in manufacturing, in logistics, in any other industry. So we are improving our processes as we go. We are making use of the insights that we are getting from AI analytics in order to improve and iterate and improve and enhance and so on. I think also it's very important to keep track of the quality of the data that we are gathering, because when we are working with big data, we need to make sure that the data is actually aligned with the data components for data governance, data quality, and data security, and all these factors. These components are very important for us when we use data and analyze it through AI. I think it's also important to have cybersecurity integrated with AI. This is in all sectors, because this will help us to have a secure digital ecosystem. And this is one of the objectives in Saudi Arabia, is to achieve this kind of secure digital ecosystem while we are adopting AI in logistics, manufacturing, and others.
Amazing. I think you brought up quite an interesting perspective to this. Like when looking at the camera regulations and from what perspective, like as we move closer towards the digital and what are some of the challenges from a regulatory perspective do you anticipate this trend?
Okay, since the investment in AI is now the eighth status in Saudi Arabia, there's a lot of competition. a lot of competition. And sometimes it's difficult for organizations to choose the best candidates to implement mega projects. This is one of the challenges that many organizations in the private sector are facing, this kind of competition. And in order to have better opportunity to be actually adopting AI in Saudi Arabia, we need to really have the latest technologies while ensuring a lot of the regulations and the policies, as per your question, that are being stated in Saudi Arabia. We have regulations for how data centers are being used, for how cloud platforms are being used, for how we are hosting the data. These regulations are quite strict, and companies, they need to understand these policies and regulations and how AI and data are being hosted and utilized in Saudi Arabia. There is a very important consideration, though, that I would like to mention. While regulators are actually emphasizing on policies, I think it's very important to reach a balance between policies and innovation. Policies should not hinder innovative solutions when it comes to emerging technologies and AI, because actually this may cause a little bit of delay in implementation. In data centers, we need a lot of technologies related to cooling, to energy efficiency. We are now even headed into green data centers. And this all requires good planning, it requires a collaboration, it requires success stories for the vendors and for the companies that are implementing businesses in Saudi Arabia.
Amazing, amazing. Mr. Shah, regulatory data center, what do you think?
Well, I think it's an evolution. The regulators, I mean, Saudi Arabia is very fortunate to have Sadaya, for example, a very, very dedicated regulator for data and AI, which I think is one of the benchmarks globally. So the kingdom has started very early on in its 2030 and digitalization strategy to make sure that there's a regulator, that is able to support that growth. So we're fortunate to have that, number one. Number two, the way data and its usage and its dissemination and its storage is changing because technologies are changing. There's lots of debates now in terms of how the language models work from an AI perspective. Where is the rights? Whose data is sitting where? In the old days, it was very simple. Your data is with an organization and they make the transactions, or it's in a repository. Now, in the AI world, there's this space above that. There's this intermediary, and I think people are trying to figure out, who's responsible for what, who has permission for what, who has rights for what, and the AI space itself is evolving. OpenAI yesterday, it went from being a non-profit organization to a profit-generating company, which took Microsoft into the 4 trillion club of free companies globally, right? So that is there strategically. Now, they are, the ChatGPT is going to develop a whole series of technologies and solutions way beyond the interpretation that we use it for at the moment. So the regulatory framework is having to figure out how that technology is changing and how to regulate it. And I think the important thing is to have the regulators close with the innovators, to ensure that the regulation is keeping pace with the changes, because the changes are super fast and they're very psychologically complicated, because it's not physical, and that virtual space is changing all the time, who knows what. So these are some of the challenges.
Amazing, amazing. So it's very difficult for the regulator to come closer to the innovator. But from a different perspective, like on the consumer of the data, like the owner of the data, being the individual that is creating the data. From a regulator, especially considering the experience in smart cities and in digital space, Like how does that space look like from how much data is too much to have and how much is too little for the way that wants to get?
Well, I think there's never going to be too much data because you'll just do more with the data. So data is the fuel of the digital world. So you're going to have more of it. The thing is, in a smart city environment, you know, you have to be conscious of the citizen, you know, the people that are in your city, yeah? And you need to have an open understanding with them that data is being collected, because at the end of the day, it's their data, yeah? But what you're trying to do from a city point of view is serve those residents in the most effective way, to make their traffic easier, to make their daily life much more comfortable, to give them better visibility of information for safety and security, yeah? To make it a nice place to live, work, and stay. Yeah? So that's the trade-off. That's what the resident gets back. But you need to negotiate that. In order to give that experience, I need data. You know, it's a bit like a waiter at a restaurant. You know, until you tell that waiter, I want to eat fish, the cook's not going to know what to make for you and make you happy. Yeah? So there's a negotiation. Yeah? So you need that data in order to drive a better experience using technology. So it's really a partnership between all of the different stakeholders, and it's a very dynamic partnership. One other thing I'd like to just mention on the data part of it, there is generational change. Yeah? My attitude to data and its privacy is very different to the attitude for my children. Yeah? Okay? The Gen Z and the Gen Alpha, they really don't care about data privacy. This type of, you know, dialogue that we're having, they want popularity. They love their data to be out there in the world. The more the better. So I think we've also got to understand, because we're the elder generation designing these things, that the consumption generation's attitude to data, to privacy, to security is way different to us. And I think that will help innovation, because they don't really want a lot of regulations and ownership. They say, I don't mind as long as my Amazon comes earlier, my pizza's warmer, my burger's fresher. I don't care who has my data, where it is, the more the better. So I think we've got to have that reality check as well.
And allow me to bounce this Fadwa in terms of like on the same topic where we're looking at there being early adapters from a data perspective, like from an AI perspective. What lessons are we learning from this early adapters? In this case, now being like the younger generations who are pushing the data like from a data perspective.
Okay, I agree with my colleague panelists. I agree with every word he has mentioned. Also, I would like to talk about what we as Saudi Arabia would like to achieve when it comes to data. We have wealth of data in Saudi Arabia. We have now national open data platform where all the ministries they actually share their open data in that portal. And this allows for having research opportunities. It allows to detect challenges and problems in the data, and it allows innovative solutions for how to overcome some of these data-related issues. When we talk about data centers and having HPC data centers and the integration of GPUs and TPUs and to have AI integrated heavily in data centers, we can never do this without having reliable data, without having this full ecosystem on the ground. And for us to have good data strategy, this is the baseline for us to have good AI strategy. You can never reach AI strategy without having a solid data strategy. So I believe also there is a very important component. I agree on the new generation, maybe they don't really care about data confidentiality and data privacy. Maybe from the regulator point of view, they would like to have more control on how this data is being utilized, who owns it, who has access to it. This is part of the data security. And I think the regulations and the policies that are being taken care of now in Saudi Arabia. It allows this kind of foresight. And this helps even with the cyber security. It allows to prevent, for example, data poisoning. Data poisoning is one of the technical terms that when a hacker accesses a system, they will not mess it up. You will not even notice that there is something wrong with the system. The hacker will just insert huge amount of wrong data for the AI algorithm to analyze and read, and therefore it will skew the results because of this data poisoning. So definitely the protection of data and making sure that our data is secure, this is a very important element, and this aligns with Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia.
Amazing, amazing. So before we proceed, I think I will give each of the panelists like 1 minute each to do like a parting shot, and then we can open the panel over to you guys. As we had agreed, like we had a deal at the beginning of the panel extends to you guys. So 1 minute each, like parting shot from this kind of stuff.
Okay, there is something that I always like to mention about balancing policies with practice. It's good to have international frameworks and regulations that guide us, that govern us. However, when we come to practice and action, we need to have local action in order to maybe adapt to the different societal needs. So not every regulation will fit in every country. This is something that I believe in. However, it's important to have general frameworks and general guidelines to follow. One more thing, I always like to stress on AI ethics. I believe AI is a major force, and we need to use it through an ethical compass in order to guide us in the right way to protect our data and to protect our societies.
From my point of view, I'm just smiling that I'm just looking back in my career how data changed. So I think the time coming in front for us in the future is a very exciting time for data. In the world of AI, data drives AI. Data historically used to be the data administrator, the DBA, the database administrator. That was this one single guy in the IT team that was locked in a little black room behind the server, but we kept him outside of the server room because he'd freeze inside the server room. Yeah, he was this nobody that was in the back of the room. In the future world of AI, the data expert is the guy that's going to be in the front of the movie. Where's the naming change from database administrator to what? Data scientist. Organizations want data scientists. They're asking the data scientist, write your number, tell us what you need. We'll give it to you. So we're really seeing the dawning of a transformation in what data is in the digital landscape of all of our different things that we do, and what the data expert is. So I think it's an amazing time to be talking about and being involved in data.
Amazing, amazing. And this discussion is not completed up today. So if anyone has a question that feels like the panel here can address, please, you can raise your hand and ask the mic to you. Thank you.
The audio is horrible. Anyway, one question. Do you think there will be like the .com bubble? Do you think there will be an AI and data center bubble?
No. Data centers and AI is real. And it's the future. A lot of our transactions depend on it. The .com and the bubbles were all about valuations. Again, going back to the open AI, I was just thinking this morning when I was flying that because of this switch of AI from being a non-profit organization yeah, people who just want to do good, to becoming a profit center, it is already worth $500 billion. I don't remember anybody being worth $500 billion as a private company. Yeah. Okay, they have not yet gone for public listing, right? And they actually don't have a valuation. They actually have a product outside of the market. I don't know, a couple of years now with OpenAI and uses ChatGPT. Okay, it's actually got people using it. It's got transactions that rely on it. Yeah, I was in a hospital a week ago, and seeing a specialist doctor, right, with a family member, and it was very funny. You know, a question came up about some medication or treatment, and he said, "Let me ask my friend." So I thought, okay, he's going to ask his friend, maybe he's going to call a consultant or a colleague. He said, "Let me open up ChatGPT." So imagine how it's being used, not just kids doing their homework. Professionals are using it for a very good reason to give a very good diagnosis. So I think it's more real.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I think this question is being asked a lot because some people don't believe in AI as much. From my perspective, I also agree with Mr. Mohammed Shah. I think AI is becoming a major force in our world today. I think it's going to even improve and improve and improve and enhance. There are three stages of AI, the ANI, which is the narrow AI, and that's the reactive kind of AI. And we have the AGI, which is the general AI, and this is where the intelligence of the machine becomes similar to the intelligence of men, and this is what we are currently implementing these days. And in the future, there will be the ASI, which is the super AI. And that will be when the machines will actually have more intelligence than humans. I believe we are actually heading there. AI is being used in various sectors, and it has proved that it is actually helping humans. I understand that there is a con side to it when it is being abused. I totally see that, I understand that. That's why I always stress on AI governance and AI ethics. This is very important.
Thank you. Convinced?
Can we ask the questioner?
Yes, thanks for being here. The question is a lot of investment, of course, going around on AI. The data centers being built around the world, including the US. And of course, Saudi Arabia is also planning to invest heavily in it. They've started Humane as an organization to set up data centers in Saudi Arabia. How do we see that Saudi Arabia? I mean, there's a lot of investment going around the world everywhere, right? The majority is led by the US. These data centers are going to be being set up as we speak. How does Saudi Arabia?
Amazon, Alibaba, Apple, NVIDIA, that came together, mimicking actually the Exxon and the Saudi Arabian collaboration. That's given birth to this next generation of industries, which will be digital industries. And the beauty of digital industries, it's border agnostic. You know, if I open up Twitter, I could be in the Himalayas, or I could be in Riyadh, or I could be in San Jose. It's irrelevant where I am. You know? So I think the capacity you're talking about is going to be consumed locally and internationally. The collaborators, the people that form these businesses and put these investments in, will benefit across the world. Because there is a global shortage of data capacity. And I just give you one example of how things are going to go. There ain't enough data centers in the world to handle it. And you look at how data production is changing. In the old days, you'd have to make a record, put it on a system, capture it, or you search for something, or you archive Wikipedia or Google generate something. In the AI world, one question from one little kid to ChatGPT can generate 10,000 times the amount of data. So the capacity will be big.
You can take one more.
Assalamualaikum. Thank you very much. First of all, you have given a great speech. It's awesome. As you have discussed that now we are becoming a global village and our location is no matter we are independent, we can be anywhere and we can utilize the data. So as you have discussed about investment opportunities for enterprises and businesses, what do you say or how do you guide the professionals, newcomers, what should be their career path, specifically here in Saudi Arabia, where they should go? So if you would like to highlight that.
Okay, it's an excellent question. We have strategic objectives in Saudi Arabia, and any industry needs to align itself with those strategic objectives in order to find its place in Saudi Arabia. So, through partnerships between government and private sector, even academia, they all work together in order to achieve the strategic objectives that we have in Saudi Arabia, including even upskilling talents in order to match with the requirements in the labor market. So for the private sector to survive in Saudi Arabia, they need to have the latest technologies that are aligned with our objectives.
Thank you very much. Combining the response to the partition.
Yeah, I would just go back to your question. It reminds me of a conversation I had with somebody. You see, skills and careers previously were built on answering a question. Yeah? The future is built on people who have the ability of asking the right question. Yeah? So people who are much more open, much more creative, are able to be concise, will need the skill set because they will be asking the systems a precise question to get the answer. So on the data and AI side, I think is where the future will be in terms of careers.
Thank you.
I agree also with Mr. Mohammed. I think it's very important for collaboration between the different stakeholders in Saudi Arabia and international stakeholders, vendors, in order to be working together in fulfilling the objectives of Vision 2030. And this includes even moving from the current existing 5G to the future 6G and to adopting quantum computing and all the latest emerging technologies, as well as localizing these technologies in Saudi Arabia. I always like to stress on the localization part because this is where we upskill the new generation and make them ready in order for them to have more innovations and have this culture of innovation in Saudi Arabia.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys, for keeping us company and for us. I think we can give a lot of applause for our speakers. Thank you.